Hello friend. How are you doing today? My name is Mary. This is Happilyeveresch, and today I am doing the mid-year book freakout tag. This tag has probably been one of the most life-changing, booktube changing tags besides the booktube newbie. It's so cool to see how this has infiltrated the community from huge creators to small creators. Very cool. So I honestly don't think I've ever done this tag, though I have been a watcher of this tag probably since it was created. I enjoy the questions a lot, but all that to say, let's just hop on in, shall we? I'm excited to add this tag finally to my booktube repertoire. So I have read so far, it's June 20 something. Who cares what day it is anymore? June 20 something, I've read 35 books, which is amazing because my goal for the year was 40. I kind of was hoping that I would pass 40 books, but I'm really kind of hoping that I can crank out a few more at the end of June and be at my 40 at the end of June, so we will see about that. So then I can maybe have a goal of doing another 40 in the second half of June. If I could read 80 books this year, I would be so proud of myself, but I'm quite happy with the 35 that I'm sitting at right now, and let's just hop into the questions. Question number 1, what is the best book you've read this year so far? And if you frequent my channel at all, this will be no surprise to you. The best book I've read so far this year is Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward. This was a book club pick, and I'm forever grateful that my book club chose this book. I adored it. It is a family story. It's a story about historical trauma in the Black community. It's a story about the prison systems. It's a story about this little boy and his family. It's a tough read, but it's so beautifully written. I can't wait to read Jesmyn Ward's backlist, and then I also hope she continues to write for years to come because I love her voice. I love the depth and the care she has for her characters. I adored this. There is a supernatural ghost aspect to it, which way put me off of this book when I first heard about that because I'm just not that into magical realism, but I felt it fit seamlessly into this book. I felt like it was what I want magical realism to be. I loved it, and I cannot wait to find more Jesmyn Ward to add to my shelves, and I will probably be rereading this book many times in my life. I thought it was phenomenal, and I will be shocked. I'll be shocked if something else beats that book out. It could happen, but I will be shocked. All right, question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far this year? I have not read a ton of sequels, but hands down the best one that I've read is The War I Finally Won by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. This is a middle grade series, and we're following our main protagonist, Ada, who was born with a club foot, who lives with a very abusive mother and her young brother. Ada lives in London, and in the first novel, it's the beginning of World War II, and there is concern for all the children with the air raids, and so they are all going to be sent to live in the countryside. Ada's mother is not going to let her go, so she ends up escaping with her young brother, and kind of their adventure starts from there. This looks at trauma in all its forms in childhood. I think it's one of the best portrayals I've read about childhood trauma in a book. Nothing is glossed over. The characters are messy but also so lovable, and I loved the second one. I don't know if I loved it more than the first one, but at least just as much. I thought it was phenomenal. The audiobook was great. I highly recommend that series. It's well loved, and I think for lots of good reasons it gets so much love and acclaim because it's really great. Question number 3 is a new release that you have and that you want to read but that you have not yet. This was a no-brainer for me, and that's The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. I just received this one this month, and I am so excited to read it. I did not read Brit Bennett's first novel, The Mothers, and I still want to, but the premise of this one definitely draws me in more than The Mothers does. This is looking at twin sisters, and they have been separated for many years and are now coming back together. And really the crux of the story is centered on one of the twins lives her life as a Black woman, and the other lives her life as a white woman, and is able to pass as a white woman and chooses to live her life in that manner. And I'm really excited to see how Britt Bennett deals with the idea of race and identity and family. It sounds really, 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 really amazing, and I can't wait to get to this one. Question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? And I don't do a great job of keeping up on new releases, but I do actually have a couple that I am excited about. The first one is the one that actually comes out in 2020, and that's Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I have heard nothing but great things for this book. It's a historical fiction book that is centered around Shakespeare and the loss of his son and the grief he goes through and his family goes through. It sounds beautiful. I read I Am by Maggie O'Farrell a couple years ago and thought it was phenomenal, so I'm very excited to get to some of her fiction, and this seems to just get all the praise. Also, the UK cover is stunning, and like the United States cover is fine, but if I purchase that book, I will be getting the UK edition because it is so stinking beautiful. I don't understand why the US cover does not look like that, because my goodness, it's glorious. And then also, this one's coming out January 5th of 2021, so it's very close to being a 2020 release, and I'm just putting it here because I'm excited about it. And that's Jamar Tisby's new nonfiction book. Jamar Tisby wrote The Color of Compromise, which was a very influential and important book for me this year, and I'm very excited to read this this nonfiction book. Question number 5 is, what was the biggest disappointment you've read this year so far? I have 2. This first one I'm going to talk about I don't think is a bad book, but when I think of disappointed, I think I have these expectations and they're not met, and that's definitely The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. I enjoyed the reading experience of this book, but I expected a lot more from it because I loved The Namesake. Not The Namesake, this is The Namesake, because I loved The Interpreter of Malady so much. I think it's one of the best short story collections I've ever read. I thought that it was phenomenal, and while I really enjoyed this book, it definitely was more just like good, okay, and not earth-shattering like The Interpreter of Maladies was. This is a family story, and it's written in a very simplistic but like deceptively simplistic way. I really loved the parent story in this, and I think I had such a strong connection with their story that the main son, who we're really like going on to follow's life, I just wasn't as connected or interested in it. But that being said, she has important things to say and is an amazing author, and I still think this is worth your time to read. It just did disappoint me a little bit because I loved The Interpreter of Maladies so much. But it definitely did not put me off of Jhumpa Lahiri. I want to read all of her work. I think she writes so beautifully, and she just handles her characters in such a masterful way. I do think I am going to enjoy her short story format more than I'm going to enjoy her novel format, but we'll just have to see as I continue through her backlist, because I will be reading all of her work. And then the second one is, I don't even think I've done a wrap-up of this yet, is a memoir by Jason Rosenthal, and it's called My Wife Said You May Want to Marry Me. I was really disappointed by this book. I was kind of thinking that it was going to be like his exploration of grief and like moving on, and while it was in a way, it felt very surface level. I think Jason Rosenthal has done some TED Talks, and I maybe would suggest, if you're interested in a story, going and listening to those and maybe skipping this book. It just wasn't for me, and I haven't gone through the kind of grief that Jason has, and so maybe that was what disconnected it for me, but it really just kind of felt like a big thank you letter to all of the people in his life, and I think that that's fine. It's just not what I wanted to read about, and I hate being so like down on someone's memoir and personal experiences, because it is so personal, and what he went through was so incredibly difficult. But I can't lie, I was disappointed by this read, and at the end of it, it kind of left me like, I wish I hadn't read it. It just didn't sit well with me. And like I said, I hate saying that about someone's memoir, but it just really was not for me. Question 6 is, what was the biggest surprise for you? So 2 books again that I haven't wrapped up. The first one being Burnt Toast Makes You Sing Good, a memoir with recipes from an American family by Kathleen Flynn. I adored this. This is probably one of my favorite memoirs I've ever read. It's almost kind of told in a short story format, but there is like a connection running through her life. But I absolutely loved the way she told her stories. I felt connected to her family. I loved the recipes. I also felt very connected with like her Midwest experience growing up in the Midwest myself. This wasn't a perfect read. I definitely think a lot of like the harder things were kind of smoothed over, and you just kind of have to like pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you'll like get the American dream. And I don't always think that that's like a real I don't want to say it doesn't happen, but I don't think that life is like as simple as maybe it was kind of painted to be in this, but I still adored this. That's a very minute kind of back of my head criticism, but it's also a memoir. It's her story, it's her life, and she can tell her story the way that she wants to. But total love. And I thought I was gonna enjoy it. I don't pick up books that I think I'm gonna hate, but this kind of knocked my socks off. I adored it. Another one that was a wonderful surprise was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I don't know why I thought that this wasn't going to be for me. I just kind of think I had some reservations about it, but I ended up really enjoying this. It's so readable and compelling. I love the kind of satirical aspect to this novel, but it also felt really real as well. I think Celeste Ng is a marvelous storyteller. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really complex. I do think for how like cool the whole buildup was, the ending was like a little too nice for me, like a little too wrap up in a little bow kind of way. So it wasn't a perfect read for me, but it was so fun and I loved the delve into these characters' lives. I think Celeste Ng just sees people in a really interesting way. And this was a really good book. It definitely left me with a little bit of a book hangover. It was just one of those like compellingly readable literary fiction books. I loved it. Question 7, a new to you favorite author, and that has to be Miss Ann Patchett. I have here with me Commonwealth, which I read at the beginning of the year, and then I also read The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. Both I just was totally sucked into. Ann Patchett does amazing character studies. Her settings are so vivid. I think she has a very good eye for characters, kind of weaving their lives together and how their lives are interconnected. I have The State of Wonder and Bel Canto on my shelf that I'm very excited to read, and I really love Ann Patchett. I think she's a marvelous storyteller, and yeah, I definitely will read anything that she puts out. I also follow her bookshop on Instagram, and she's just a delight. All of the like books she's been talking about, she's really fun. I just like feel like I would like her as a person as well. Question 8 is your newest fictional crush. I don't really get fictional crushes. I would say I get more like character crushes, like I want to be your friend, or like I like your family, and I can think of a couple. I love Susan from The War That Saved My Life and The War I Finally Won. I think she's a complex, flawed caregiver who's just trying to do her best for the people around her, and I definitely like have a friend crush on her. I would love to be her friend. I would love to have her in my life and just have like the person that she is, like be a presence in my life. I also love the family dynamics and the characters in The Hate You Give. I think that Star and her brothers and her parents have just a wonderful dynamic, and I love the way that they're written. So I definitely have like a family crush on them. I think that they're wonderful. And then same with the grandfather-grandson relationship in Sing Unburied Sing. It's one of the best male to male relationships I've read in literature. I love the portrayal and the love, and I, yes, have all the heart eyes for their relationship. And then question 9 is newest favorite character, and I think all of the above for kind of my crushes. If I have like a fictional crush on them, I kind of also like want to be their friend, and they're my new favorite characters. But yeah, probably Susan. I will say, if you kind of could see in my other answers, I'm very into like dynamics between characters and what that looks like, and that's kind of what draws me to people more than like who they are in the book, because I think it's so relational and it's so hard for me to like parse that like take that apart, like remove the characters from like the dynamics that they're working in and living in. And so it's a lot of times it's not like I want to be friends with them. I just enjoy like their dynamic, and I don't know. I hope that that makes sense. But probably Susan is one of my favorite characters. Like I would want to be friends with her. So, oh, and Mr. Marsworth. He's absolutely a favorite character from Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth by Sheila O'Connor. I think he's a gem, and there's something about elderly people that I'm just drawn to, like elderly characters. Always and forever. Heart eyes for them. I just feel like their life experiences so like shape them, and I just feel like oftentimes there is like a softening in as you age and as you learn and grow, and you see that the world is not always idealistic or black and white. You know, there's so much gray, and I think that there's so much softening. Same thing in like A Place for Us, like the father and a softening. I just there's something about older characters, and that's obviously an gross oversimplification of people later in age in books, but I do think the perspective is often different, and I really appreciate that perspective and the reckoning and the looking back on your life. Anyway, Mr. Marsworth, always and forever a favorite. Question 10, a book that made you cry. Now, I know I cry somewhat frequently when I read books, but honestly, it's like hard for me to remember. I remember like the emotional connection that I have to things, but probably most of like the books that I mentioned that I really loved made me at least tear up. But I think the book that like gave me the most like emotional draw to it, and that kind of left me with that like achy feeling, is the novel A Place for Us by Fatima Farheen Mirza. This book is a slow burn, and you are really in the middle of this getting to know the characters, and it almost seems to like, what end are you like giving me this many details? But to me it so pays off in the end. I don't think I would have had as emotional of a reaction to this novel, and especially the end of this novel, if I hadn't been with this family through their hard moments. And this definitely made my like heartbreak for this family, but also gave me a lot of hope. I think that this being a debut novel, I can't wait to see what she continues to write. I don't think this was a perfect novel. I definitely had some things that I would have liked to have changed or to have seen done differently, but the way she like emotionally wrapped me up in these characters was phenomenal. It was amazing. And also the way she like connects this family to their religion. We're following a Muslim family in this, and the way they're like connected to the stories of their religion, it was beautiful. So I really enjoyed and was emotionally like distraught by that novel. Also like the title, I think about the title and it makes me like, oh, A Place for Us. Like I just definitely probably like a huge emotional draw there. A book that makes you happy, any of the middle grade. A Little Princess I read this year. I had never, well, that's not true. I had read some of it as a child, but that book just heartwarming, sweet, so sweet. The War That Saved My Life. Yes, Burnt Toast Makes You Sing Good. That one made me really happy. And then Anne of Green Gables, I've read a couple of those. Those are just like comfort read, cozy, enveloping, always make me happy when I'm reading an Anne of Green Gables book. 12, what is the most beautiful book that you've bought this year so far? That's a hard question. I like to buy beautiful books, but I'm gonna show you a few, and I think you'll kind of get like a theme of like what I really enjoy. So 2 adult novels. Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane. I love the typography. I love the colors. This kind of like way out looking at a neighborhood. Little Fires Everywhere does a very similar thing. I think that book's stunning. My Absolute Darling by Gabrielle Talent. I think it's stunning. I love the tree, the like bright colors, typography. You see a theme here? I couldn't not show some middle grade because middle grade just, their covers just phenomenal covers. So I have Some Kind of Happiness by Claire Legrand. Again, I love the kind of drawing, the trees. I've got a thing for trees. This crown, the typography. And then when like books like really are intentional with like keeping the cover going, both of those ones down there are the same. And then this one I also really love, Song for a Whale by Lynn Kelly. I love the colors, I love the whale, and again it kind of wraps around. So some beautiful books, but I could honestly pull so many, but you get a feel for what I like there. And then 13, what books do you still need to read this year? All of them? This feels like a daunting question, all of the books. I did pull some from my shelves, but that new release, The Brit Bennett, I would love to read. This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger. I absolutely want to get to this year and this summer. It feels like a very summer, early fall read, so definitely want to get to this one soon. I also still want to read A Gentleman in Moscow, and again, I feel like it's so perfect for this particular moment we're in, so I definitely want to be getting to this one sooner rather than later, though it does still feel like a cold month book for me. I tried to start reading it and kind of had a hard time getting into it just for the moment that we're in. I think I'm gonna love it once I get going. I've mentioned this book a couple times, but The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead I want to get to pretty soon. But all of the books, I still want to read all of them. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not already. I would love to have you here on my little bookish corner of the internet. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. I have my Goodreads, my Bookstagram. It's all linked down below. Also, if I mentioned any booktubers, they're linked down below. Go check them out. All right, friends, I think that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.